good everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Hey, we're doing a review today. My friends, we are reviewing the TicWatch Pro 3 GPS. Full disclosure guys, Mobvoi did send me the TicWatch Pro 3 for review. However, there are no other expectations and they are not going to get a chance to view this video before you do on YouTube. This is a running channel and I am going to review this watch as a running watch, but it is primarily a smartwatch. Now, whereas my Garmin Fenix and my Polar Vantage V2 are predominantly sport watches that have smart features, the TicWatch Pro 3 is a smartwatch that has sport features. Now, it does have full-on GPS. It can connect to all the GPS satellites around the world, GLONASS, Galileo, and another one. But we're going to get into that in the second part of the video when I actually go out and run with it and I compare it against the other watches. But I would be doing this watch a disservice if I didn't include the smartwatch features, because really that is what this watch is about, and it does a pretty good job. The TicWatch Pro 3 does run on Google's Wear OS. And this is the first watch I've had that has Google Wear OS. And I've been a little hesitant in the past to go with Wear OS just because it seems a little buggy. Just looking at reviews of other watches, it just doesn't seem quite like it's there. At least when you compare it to a smartwatch like the Apple Watch. Generally speaking, I am an Apple guy. But I really am not a fan of the Apple Watch, mainly because of the shape. I'm just not a fan of square watches. So I was pretty excited when Mobvoi reached out and they wanted to send me this for review. And I have to say, I was pretty surprised. And I'm just gonna get right out there in the front and say it, it does compare to the Apple Watch. This is the first Wear OS device that I think is a competitor to the Apple Watch. I have been using this watch with my iPhone with very few limitations. Now this watch does have a 1.4-inch AMOLED display. It is beautifully bright. It's just a treat to look at. Let's talk about form factor for a second, because in my opinion, this is a very, very good looking watch. It's very simple, it's classy, it can be worn for sports and maybe a night out on the town. But seeing as no one is going out for a night out on the town anymore, you're probably just going to be using this around the house and for sports. It is made of stainless steel and a high strength nylon mixed with glass fiber on the back. It almost feels like a very high quality plastic. Plastic kind of takes away from what it actually is. It feels really nice. The watch band that it comes with is really very nice. It looks almost like a leather strap with a red stitching along the edge. It's actually a silicone band, which makes it ideal for sporting activities if you're going to be getting sweaty. No one wants to sweat in a leather band. It does use the standard 22mm bands, so you can easily switch them out for any 22mm band you can find. The TicWatch Pro 3 is primarily controlled by touchscreen, but it does have two buttons on the right-hand side. The top button opens up your app screen so you can scroll through them, and it brings you back to your time screen if you're ever like lost in the apps. The bottom button is programmable and you can have any one of the apps open up with a touch of that. I have it set to the Tic Exercise, and by opening up the Tic Exercise, I can choose from any of the apps, from outdoor run, outdoor walk. There's a whole bunch of sport profiles that you can use in the Tic Exercise app. This watch is IPX8 rated. As we all know, IPX rating means it can be underwater up to 1 meter deep for up to 30 minutes. So while it's not waterproof like some of the other sport watches, it is water resistant enough for you to actually go swimming with it. I would probably leave it on shore if you're gonna go diving though. That's just looks. What we're really talking about is the performance, and this performs well because of the new Snapdragon Wear 4100 chip. Does that mean anything to you? It doesn't mean anything to me, but it is the newest and latest chip, and that is what makes this watch's operating system so smooth and flawless. The touch screen responds immediately and you can scroll through the apps really smoothly. When you open up an app, it opens quickly. This watch does have 1 gig of RAM and 8 gigs of ROM, which means with the Snapdragon 4100 chip combined with that 1 gig of RAM, it ups the processing power, and that's what makes everything run so smoothly. The watch does have a built-in speaker and microphone, so you're able to answer your phone on your watch and talk to it. We'll do a test of the speaker a bit later on. It has a barometric altimeter. It has 24-hour heart rate monitoring, sleep monitoring, and noise detection. It does have NFC, so you can connect your credit card to Google Pay, and you can pay through your watch. One of the standout features of this watch is battery life, and again, that is helped along by the Snapdragon 4100 chip. Mobvoi claims that you can get up to 72 hours of battery life in one charge with all your notifications on. Now it also has Essential Mode, and what Essential Mode does is that it cuts down all those battery sucking apps running in the background. The AMOLED screen isn't working, there's no GPS tracking, it lets go of your heart rate. Basically it gives you an FTS end screen, which is just like a digital watch, and it gives you time, the date, and it counts your steps. When it's in Essential Mode, this watch can last for 45 days. You can also set the watch to switch to essential mode from your normal smartwatch at different percentages, depending on what you feel comfortable with. And at least that'll last for a couple more days, so your watch isn't just a brick on your arm. Another standout feature, and this is solely for Mobvoi, they have done a dual layer display. When the AMOLED display is not on, it switches to an FTSN display. That old school display just sips power. When you're not looking at your watch, it's not just sucking through that energy with the screen on all the time. My watch lasted about 2.5 days. Now I know Mobvoi does claim a 72-hour battery life, but I had more stuff turned on than what they recommend for that 72-hour battery life. Still, over 2 days is insanely impressive. My Apple Watch has to be charged every single day without fail. So if I can get away for 2, approaching the 3rd day without charging my watch, that is a win. There are loads of watch faces available on Wear OS and the Mobvoi app. You will be spoiled for choice with watch faces. You can also download your own photos and use that as a watch face. Here I've got the Be Kind, Be Happy, Run Well logo on the watch now. And let's go through a few of the apps that I really find interesting. You're gonna press that top right button and it opens up your app menu. The top of my app menu, I have TicExercise, Strava, and Adidas Running. We're gonna get back into that when we get to the actual running part of testing this watch. I require a lot of alarms, so I was very pleased to find that there is an alarm app on here and you can actually program as many alarms as you want. Let's have a look at TicBreathe. TicBreathe is kind of like a deep breathing exercise to help you lower your stress. If we go ahead and start it, it actually walks you through a breathing exercise which will calm you down and lower their stress level. You can see here the bubble expands as you're breathing in and then contracts when you're exhaling. Next up is TicPulse. Now, one of the reasons that I don't get that 3-day battery life, that full 3 days, is probably 2.5 with the settings that I want, is because I want all-day heart rate monitoring. If you didn't want to have all-day heart rate monitoring turn on, you can just open up the TicPulse app and you can get your heart rate right then. This watch does have an SpO2 sensor, so why don't we give that a test right now. We're going to open up TicOxygen, and I am using a finger-based SpO2 sensor to compare against the TicWatch. And when we open it up and we wait for both to get my oxygen level, we can see here that the finger-based oxygen monitor shows me at 97% oxygen saturation, and the watch shows me at 98% oxygen saturation. Pretty impressive to have that on your wrist, especially in the times of COVID when blood oxygen saturation is just such an important way to track the seriousness of your disease if you get it. TicSleep is the next app I want to take a look at, and if we open it up, it's actually a pretty good sleep tracker. We can see this graph with, looks like just a bunch of little lines on the watch, but if you do open up the Mobvoi app, it shows that in a much more friendly way to consume this data. Next up is the voice memo feature, and I find this very convenient to have. If I just want to take a quick voice memo, it syncs to my phone when I'm done and I can play it back on my watch. This is also a great time to show you how the speaker works. Hey my friends, now would be a great time to give this video a thumbs up if you're getting any enjoyment out of it at all. Giving a video a thumbs up is a great way to support your creators by showing them that the video is good enough to click that little thumbs up button. So the speaker is actually pretty good, and I had it at full volume, which is definitely loud enough for me to hear. Okay, now seems like a great time to go for that run, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking about the GPS features, how this works as a running watch. Before we head out on the run, Mobvoi does claim that the watch lasts 20 hours in GPS mode. Now, according to my calculations, I haven't not charged it for 20 hours or actually tested it all the way down to 0, but that is about right if I just extrapolate out through the short runs that I do. And obviously 20 hours is more than long enough to run any marathon. In fact, if you are an especially good runner, 20 hours is enough time to run a 100-mile race. So let's go for a run, and as soon as we come back, I am going to tell you my opinions on using this as your GPS sports watch. Super steamy run this morning, guys. Oh, it's unbelievable. I did wear sunglasses, but thinking that the sun was going to come up and burn off the fog, but it didn't happen. 63 degrees, 97% humidity, 17.22 degrees Celsius, so a bit warm, especially with that humidity. The dew point is 62, so just very uncomfortable, a real soaking. This is how I have been running for, I don't know, almost the last 2 weeks. I think a bit under 2 weeks, but I've been running with the Garmin Fenix 5X, my Polar Vantage V2, which has become my daily driver, and of course the TicWatch Pro 3, which is what we're talking about today. Today's run, it was actually a pretty good run. It was wet, but it was very comfortable out. 11 miles, just over 11 miles, which is about 17.7 kilometers, an average pace of 7:49 a mile, which is 4:51 a kilometer. I got a few things to talk about this watch as a running watch. Obviously, I've been wearing it for almost 2 weeks, so there's something that works about it. Well, let's get back to the house and I'll tell you a little more about it. And we're back. Let me just start right off by saying that this watch will work for you if this is your only watch and you want to use it for running. Now, you have several options for tracking your activities. There are several apps that you can use. There is the inbuilt Tic Exercise app, and you would select Tic Running. Now, before you do so, this is a biggie. You have to go into the Mobvoi app and connect your account to Strava. That way, when you're done, it will automatically upload your run to Strava. Can't think of really anything worse than going for your run and then realize you haven't connected your watch to Strava. If you didn't do that, there is no way from the Mobvoi app to actually upload your run to Strava after the fact. You cannot export it as a GPX file or any of the other files that Strava accepts after the fact. Once that run is uploaded to Strava, you can then download a GPX file from Strava, but by that point you really don't need it because it's already on Strava. I have tested several of the running apps. I have used the Strava app, I have used the Adidas running app. The Adidas running app, you can actually connect exterior devices to it. So if you wanted to connect your chest heart rate strap, you can do that. The Adidas app is the only one that you can add external monitors. You cannot add it in the Strava app and you cannot add it in the Tic Exercise app. Is that a big deal? Not really, because you do have the wrist-based heart rate monitoring on all the time. Now, with that said, the Adidas running app cannot upload to Strava. So for me, that totally discounts it. Your best ways to track your runs are through the Tic Exercise running app or the Strava app itself. Out of all three watches, my Phoenix, my Vantage V2, and this TicWatch Pro 3, this watch locked in on the satellites quicker than the Garmin Phoenix and the Polar Vantage V2. I found the GPS to be very comparable to the other watches that I compared it with, but a downside that I did find was the button. So you know there are only 2 buttons on the watch. Well, when you're running, the lower button is the only one that you can actually use to start and stop your activity. The top button is always the primary function button, which brings you back to the time screen. So effectively, we've only got one button that works. Everything else is a touch interface. So if you're running intervals and you need to check off a split every 30 seconds, you will not be able to do that on this watch. There is also no way to import workouts that you might be used to if you've been running with a Garmin, a Suunto, or a Polar watch. Now, I sound like a broken record. This is a smartwatch and not a sports watch. It is primarily that smartwatch that does sport things very well. Doesn't do it perfect, and there are a few things missing, but it does accurately track your heart rate and it does accurately track your distance. And it uploads to Strava. How accurate is that GPS? So let me put up on the screen right now a map from one of my runs, just so you know what's going on here. The orange marker is the Polar Vantage V2, the red one is the Garmin Phoenix 5X, and the blue one is the TicWatch Pro 3. We can see immediately that the orange, the Vantage V2, is coming a little wide. Now, I know that I am running on the road right now in this position, and it looks like the TicWatch Pro 3 and the Garmin are pretty accurate. This is an interesting shot right here because there's a lot of mishmash as I'm kind of running past each different course. So we can see that all three watches seem to handle this corner pretty well as I come around. It's difficult to see. All three watches seem to be spot on. I know it's the middle of the night. I'm probably running down the middle of the road right here. I want to draw your attention to this median. I know that I stuck to the right side of the median when I came around. The TicWatch Pro 3 in blue has me definitely to the left of the median. In this case, it looks like the Garmin Phoenix 5X wins this round. My friends, I know that was a very small sample of GPS accuracy, but I have been very impressed with how accurate the TicWatch Pro 3 is. Now, should I be that impressed? Probably not. It's using the same satellites as all the other watches, but I have to say that in my analysis of the runs that I have done, and I just picked a few samples of runs, the TicWatch Pro 3 does perform as well as, if not better, some of the other watches that I'm using. So who is the TicWatch Pro 3 for, and do I recommend it? Let me start with the last question. I definitely recommend it. I have used this watch for almost 2 weeks and I have been thrilled with it. Not just because of the smartwatch capabilities, but because it can do double duty. It is an adequate watch to be your sports watch. If you want a dedicated sports watch with all the bells and whistles that Garmin, Suunto, Polar can offer, then go with one of them. If you're looking for a daily driver, a watch that looks good, has all the smart capabilities that you want, you can pay your grocery bills at the shops, you can talk on the phone on it, and you can track your runs and all your other activities, I think the TicWatch Pro 3 is going to be good for you. This watch does retail for around $300, $299.99. I will link to it on Mobvoi's website right below. If you do have any other questions, go ahead and write them in the comments below. I'm sure when I'm editing this video, I'm going to go back and I'm going to realize that there was a lot of stuff that I wanted to tell you, but didn't. So please write your questions down below. Thanks for staying all the way to the end of the video. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.